And you're now listening to TLKinfamous. Hey guys, we are back with TLKinfamous. My name is Socially, and we got Saint here.
What's up?
Today we have a special guest, a painter, sculptor, published art writer, and 30 years of teaching experience, Juste. How are you feeling today?
Good. Not bad, thank you. Cold, but good.
Cold. How was it traveling over here?
Not too bad. Parking was rough, but we made it.
Nice. Well, we're happy to have you. You have a multifaceted career. With the career and your skill sets, like, what is the most thing that gravitates to you out of everything that you do?
In terms of what I really like to do, what I like gravitate toward, I guess like making art. Yeah. I like making art, but I like to inscribe that in a social setting, because I always thought that my art is not more important than having a social life, having the art sort of like fit into a social environment. So I make art for people in mind, for it to be consumed. Yeah.
So for you, like, you get by your artwork, you get influenced a lot by like living.
Yes, but a lot of memory as well. Doesn't mean that I'm personally around, like, just sort of like a social butterfly going around and
right.
Here's my show.
Right.
In fact, I don't
but
do
seeing the world and understanding.
I'm sorry.
Like just seeing the world itself and
yes, but a lot of it to memory as well.
Gotcha.
I think that I'm sort of like I kind of do it for people, and not just for the moment. Yeah, I think that's always been my strategy. I have sort of like a rendezvous with history or something. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Can you describe some of the artwork that you create?
Yes. I tend to work, like very large scale, work, like 10 feet tall, 11 feet tall, 21 feet wide, and I've used like commercial paint, and it's often very, I guess accessible, I suppose. Yeah. It's not, there's colors to look at, there's forms and shapes to look at, so it's not difficult, although I've heard otherwise, but.
Yeah.
Do some of the art forms that you choose to dabble with was the choice to use paint, was that specific, or like was it available to you and then you created art out of it?
I'm not. Could you explain?
What are some of the choices, like some of the tools that you use in some of the art? Like you said, you use a lot of paint. Do you use that for specific reasons, or because it was an available tool to create what you wanted to create?
Yeah. My training was very conventional. Work with painters. You work on a canvas, and oil paint and that kind of stuff. And then actually, I had finished, the school, master's program at Brooklyn College, and then a teacher I had never studied with, like a William T. Williams, very well known, respected, African American artist. Saw my work one time, at the student building, Subo in Brooklyn College. And, this was like, I had graduated in 83, and this was like maybe like, 84 or something, maybe a semester. He says, man, these people didn't teach you shit. And I'm like looking at him, and he was kind of like right, because my work was so like on a decline. I had gone to school, that had given me fellowships. I was really, I did very well in the program and stuff. And then my work sort of like declined gradually as I was in the program. And so William T. Williams saw my work, and I had never studied with him, which is kind of strange. I should have, but I didn't know he was actually on the campus.
Yeah.
Which, what do you think was the cause of the decline in your work at that time? Was it because of the program itself?
I think that I had to basically, I guess find my own way.
Yeah.
And the program was not a strict program where to tell you kind of like what to do, like theoretically, which way to orient yourself. It was very loose. So it's not like I had to unlearn things, but I guess I needed the ladder. I went to art school because I did, I have like a minor as an undergrad in art. So grad school was like, well, let me see how the painters actually do it, And so I think that the decline had to do. I needed more space, like I guess mental space to think about my own work.
Right.
I was like, things were really hard for me financially. I was like, I put myself to school, and pay for it. I had like one pair of jeans that I had to patch up, and so it was kind of rough. Right. So I had to get out of that, school setting, because I had been in school for like almost like 7 years at that time, and I needed a change, and and so I think probably a combination of all these things.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask, you have teaching experience for 30 years, and then you have a big background in art, in general. When you was basically young, and you're still young, but when you was still navigating life and figure out what is your purpose here, how did you fine tune? Because like you are multifaceted. You have a lot of skills and a lot of stuff that you dabbled in. Throughout your experience, how did you figure out, okay, this is the pathway? And with you going into school, and like you said, you're doing all these fellowship programs where there was a kind of decline. How did you figure out, okay, I'm gonna still stick to this this pathway? I may need to find a new method, but how did you navigate? Like, what was your thoughts in those moments?
Basically, I had to kind of like take my time.
Right.
I remember one time in art class, and the people were talking. How teachers always they come over, they'll tell you how you doing, they'll kind of criticize your work, and I was doing my stuff, and a classmate tell the teacher, why don't you just leave Andre alone, let him do it. And the teacher was like, well, he's here getting an MFA, so I have to tell him things.
Right.
And so I guess I it's not like I want to be left alone, but I think that sometimes every person needs the time to kind of like and the rhythm,
right.
to find their niche and how they're gonna go about doing things, and that's the same thing for me too. It's always and still like that. I need, it's not so much that I have like a vision from the outset, and I want to follow this path as far as career, and I had to kind of like fill my way with things. I taught, high school. Little kids, a little bit of college. I made art on the side. I was sort of like involved, in some political, circles and stuff. Haiti and stuff. And so I did a bunch of things. I got married.
Right.
I did a lot of different things, and I just kind of like, just found, managed to find my own direction as I go along, so to say. But not, yeah.
I think you also bring like a great point about as an artist, you need to find your own way. But I also feel like as an artist too, like there is a need for mentorship. But like you said, it's all about the proper mentorship, because sometimes you need a mentor that's gonna that's gonna allow you to have your own autonomy and give you your space, but also be able to properly critique or navigate you in the proper direction.
Yes, yeah.
Because like I say, if you're someone who's new, if someone who's more experienced will be able to see something. Okay, this is the direction that I see that you're going in. Let's try to, So I think that, as an artist myself, I feel like that's something I definitely crave, mentorship.
Yeah.
But it is a tough thing to come by. The proper mentorship.
Actually, that's a very important point that you bring up.
Yeah.
At Brooklyn College, had I had a William T. Williams as a mentor, I would have been because I met there's a much more famous artist than I am, Larry Ward.
Yeah.
I think is of Jamaican background. He studied with he's a little bit younger than me. He studied with William T. Williams. He told me personally that William T. Williams was like personally responsible for like really helping him out and like navigate, open things up for him and stuff in the art world and stuff. And so, but it's fine. He suggested that when he saw my work in that building, he said, "Well, Andre, you need materials in your work. You need more materials."
Right.
And I was just painting with paint, and basically I kind of heard him. And then, but it's not like I went there like the next day I started using materials.
Yeah.
And so what happened? But that was the course. I did end up, as opposed to just painting on canvas, I would start using paper, cut up the paper, and I cut up the plywood. Right. So material became really important to me.
I love that.
So mentorship is extremely important.
Yeah.
I think that especially like in the art world, the art world can be pretty. Right now, it's like, art is like open up, like you see.
It open, but it's very elitist.
Elitist. Okay, back then, like in the 70s and 80s, the art world is very, different, different world altogether. Right now, I'm just shocked that you open up the New York Times on the weekends, like, you think like the New York Times was a black newspaper, like you see, African American artists on the cover here, like 2 stories, and it's like the floodgates have been open. I'm not sure what it's all about. Even in the permanent collection of the museums, you go to the museums at the Met. I'm like, wow, they're hanging like black artists and
more black art.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable.
Yeah,
I guess Black Lives Matter is part of it.
Definitely, it's very political.
And but I also I also wonder about it. Yeah.
Right. I did see that one because going back to mentorship, I know that one of the artists that you mentioned whose work you enjoy is Emmanuel Maurice.
Yes, Emmanuel. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So what exactly about his work itself that intrigues you and inspires you?
Well, Emmanuel maybe was an older. He's like a different generation than myself, and I've met him like in the early '80s, and then he was I guess within his own circle. Mary J is not a well-known artist outside of the Haitian art world.
Right.
Although I know people collect his work and so forth, but in fact he was left out of the mainstream of Haitian art world. Books have been written, and he was completely out of it. And then and other people were considered were given a lot greater platform, larger platform than he was, and the cohort of people that he sort of like evolved with, even back in Haiti. So like they were able to go like way ahead, accomplish great things. They travel abroad, went to Europe and had shows here and there. And Meiji was always like kind of like in the background trying to find his way. He's a late bloomer, basically. But from my own opinion, from what I've seen of other people's his peers' work, I consider him to be like a really supreme artist. I think his work is very consistent.
Yeah.
And it kind of like took a long time for him to kind of like find his niche.
Right.
And he was kind of like very open to and he was, I guess he was, go back to, he was mentored. He allowed himself to be mentored as an older artist. He went to SVA. He was a construction worker. He went on the side, went to SVA, School of Visual Arts, and was able to find himself actually I think it's Edward Osby, who passed away, African American artist, who was able to, that I've spoken to when my research about Emmanuel Merisier, and who was able to kind of like who taught him the basic stuff about the craft basically.
Yeah.
And Merisier is quite. It's not that his peers had not learned the craft, but Merisier, like, he was like he searched. He looked for what he wanted. He went to the museums, and he was very open to new influences. And at the same time, he remained, he steadfastly positioned himself within that quote unquote Haitian art world. The subject matter was Haiti, even though he lived in a big metropolis, East Orange. But he painted, Haiti. He painted the spirits, the lives, and the landscape, and his memories, and things that he saw. And he sort of like basically championed the peasantry and so on and so forth. So he, even though he stuck to this sort of like very old, almost you could even say dated subject matter, but there was something true about that I kind of like respected.
I love that too. He could have had the potential to be international if he wanted to. Like I said, he's very talented, but I think he was more so focused on the art and what he wanted to tell and sticking by Haiti.
He's kind of stuck to his gun, and he he saw like more contemporary artists, who were doing like great African American artists or what have you, who were doing like great things, even European artists that he liked.
Right.
But he was able to stick to his gun and do what he, and it took it. I learned a lot from him. He's very patient.
Right. Because would you say like when you're talented, like I said, someone like him, like who's talented, who just has the natural ability, it's easy, would you say, to like if he wanted to jump into the mainstream and contemporary pop transition if they wanted to.
Well, the mainstream, that's a very I guess, like, even for me, I'm sort of like Emmanuel Merisier myself. I'm still kind of like my field is really like like the old country and memory and so I'm sort of like I'm not to that extent. Like if you're a modern artist, you're supposed to be like this universal person, like you're beyond borders, you don't restrict yourself to a national ethos. You don't restrict yourself to to race. You're kind of like this
pop,
this big,
pop culture.
Exactly, and that's a but I'm a modernist. I definitely, just like Major, I'm definitely a hardcore modernist. But there is still that very strong attachment that I have to my own personal memories, and not just in Haiti. And it's sort of like really actually goes goes back to I guess you could say Africa, in a way. Just lately, actually, I was reading about just like I was rereading a book called Mami Lola, a voodoo priestess in Brooklyn. And I'm reading this chapter about Dambala, and I'm like, holy shit, this is like. I mean, I had read a bunch of books about Dambala and the voodoo and so forth, and so rereading this book and this particular chapter, and wow, that's exactly what I've been doing. It's like this whole idea about the serpent spirit, the rainbow, and having its one leg in the water and one leg in the mountain, like straddling. The snake can take on different forms. It can go in the water, it can go in the air, it can climb. It's like it's everywhere, and it's so I'm like, wow, that's exactly where my work is anchored, in that sort of philosophy.
For the people that may not be familiar with that metaphor, what would that metaphor imply? One leg in the water, one leg in a mountain, I believe you said.
Well, I think Dambala stands for this sort of like this continuity, this constant. It's like the snake sheds its skin, so to say, but it's still like the snake. You know what I mean? So it's really connects like now and before.
Oh, I like that. So it's shedding.
Yeah, right. It's a
self.
huge extension.
Yeah.
And it feeds on itself too. Dambala is sort of like it's the beginning and the end, and it's the oldest and deepest sort of like thing you can imagine.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So and I find myself, rereading this passage, and I'm like, whoa, this is like, it kind of like hit me between the eyes, And so this other thing about finding your path, sort of like and sometimes it's like how do we know certain things? We know that like we shouldn't drink soda because it it kind of like does this to your body or whatever.
Yeah.
But knowing takes a certain amount of time, and there are different ways to know things. And so one of the things that I'm trying to understand, and at least and perhaps share, I would like to share it, is that we need to learn how to know things our way.
Yeah.
We need to. I remember when I first started teaching, at Walt Whitman, his junior high school, and I had this. I started as an English teacher, and this was my first time teaching. It was like pretty rough. I did one semester there. Anyway, so I had a bunch of sixth graders, and I had we did like a little journal, like a little literary magazine, and they had to write their own poems. And I remember calling it in our own words, which is like let's sort of like sounds like corny, our own word. Everybody says that be unique and so forth. But I guess that connects to what I'm saying right now, learning how to process things your way, because like you hear what people tell you. There are all these models out there for us, like fit into this model, fit into that model, fit into that model.
What works for you?
It's very easy to, and it's sometimes comfortable to fit into like certain models. Pre-made, prefab.
The popular ones too.
Right. Like I imagine, like even with clothing, like everything's preset for you.
Yeah.
And you have this designer and that designer, and you're supposed to like So when you choose your own path, that's that, I think that's a great thing, and that's not necessarily to be individualistic. I believe in models. I believe in mentorship, but you still have to find you have to unlearn what your mentor has taught you. You have to digest it.
And I agree. So you can, I think people do learn differently. So basically, trying to find a model that works for that person is going to be a little bit more purposeful than trying to do something more standardized.
Right.
Before we get onto education, I did want to ask you, because you were talking about the beginning and the end, and basically the experience that you lived, they shape the choices that you make in the future. I know one of the projects that you worked on in 2013, which is called Looking Forward, Looking Back, the major works of the last 35 years. I wanted to know a little bit more about that, because just the title alone tells, it sparked my interest, and I was interested.
Well, I retired from teaching in 2013, after like some 30 years, I had taught like it was great. Teaching was a last minute thing for me. I didn't know. I mean, I was going to school just taking classes, and first I was like, first of all, when I got the book in college, like open admissions time, right? I didn't really do much in high school. I didn't read. I just went to school. I did a lot of martial arts. That's all I cared about. And so I get a postcard one summer saying report to Brooklyn College, and I had no idea what they want with me. I didn't know how to go to college, you know. And so I got there. They gave me this placement test, one in math, and so I could do math. Okay, good, you know. But English, it's like, well, man, you can't read, or you don't know how to write, and so and so I had to take like a special reading class and writing classes, and then little by little, 2 years later, I'm just taking classes, and then I find out it's like I have to choose a major for myself.
Yeah.
So I look at my transcript. I'm like, well, I've got all these classes taken in English. Well, that's my major. So I went from like a non-reader, non-writer to like an English major, and it goes to show you that, from my experience with teaching, is that a lot of our kids, and I'm talking, our kids, can actually do better if they get the right people around them. I don't really believe. I may be straying from the question you asked me there, but
no, keep
yeah,
saying.
but I really believe. I read this in there's a book that I read in it called Soledad Brothers. So I think I forgot who wrote it. I think I forgot his name. Activist was in San Quentin and so forth. And one thing he said in that book, the worst thing you could do is to have your enemies teach your kids. Yeah. And I think that that kind of like I think that as far as when it comes to our kids, it's good to have people with all kind of degrees teach them, and you have all these to be a teacher you have to have this degree and that degree and and so forth. But I think that very often there are plenty of people in our communities if they're chosen and put in the right setting to teach,
right resources
they can teach our kids.
Exactly.
I don't think. You know what I mean? I really believe that.
I agree.
And I think that you can always bring the expert who knows calculus and the expert who knows, chemistry to do that. But we have those in our community as well. So it's not like we don't have them. We invented all these things.
We had those things going on. Like even think back to the Black Panther, they was creating organizations and stuff where they were self-teaching their community.
Exactly.
Give them principles and philosophies to live by.
So the idea of and that's why I have like even now I have a major beef with. With liberalism in general, that the idea that somehow there is this preset framework for us that somehow some people think, the liberal world, the liberalist world thinks that somehow they know what's good for us, and so they'll they'll say, well, Marx is good for you. You know what I mean? They'll say, like capitalism is good for you. Like and sometimes we plug ourselves into these models. Yeah. Without actually, there's nothing wrong per se with those models. I mean, there's great things about capitalism, great things about communism, great things about all kinds of ism, right? But the idea is though is to process those things to who you are, and with and not leaving out, part of your history. And saying, well, listen, what we do is mumbo jumbo, and let's get with those new models. That's the in thing. Let's get in with that.
History is very important.
Yeah. So I feel
like that the education system, like you said, I feel like there's a little hypocrisy when it comes to, like you said, teaching the youth, because you have people that don't really identify with the groups of people that's attending the education system,
right.
And they're teaching history that doesn't really make sense to them.
Right.
When you have grandparents or people that they grew up with in the neighborhood that's telling them, no, this is what happened. So when they get into the school education system, a lot of times they're confused. And then, some of the response where kids that, are not necessarily having resistance, but are not necessarily passing the scores based on their system.
Right.
A lot of times they usually say not for me, and that's so relatable because a lot of the information that's in
it's not resonating.
It doesn't resonate with the times. It doesn't push social advancement. It doesn't push progress within development within the communities. And I feel like a lot of these models don't do anything. If your experience, growing up in Haiti, where you had some education in Haiti as well in your adolescence, what was your experience, and if you can say, what would you say is like some of the main differences between the education system in Haiti and the education system in America?
Well, I hate to say this, we're probably worse in Haiti.
Okay.
Well, only in the sense that it's funny. After having taught for like all these years, I think about 2 years ago, I sat down and actually wrote something about education. That's like a 2-page thing, very short. in Haitian Creole, which I had to do it. So the difference that in Haiti you're given the old colonial system, like you learn everything in French, you learn things by rote, you know, and you know what, it's, you know, that I'm not just like knocking that down, because it's an obvious target, and there are like great people who've done, you know, great thing in that system. People who've gone to school in Haiti, like, you know, have done, you know, gone up to, let's say, finished their high school, they call it philo, you know, there's the last 2 grades, and they go they come to school here, they do very well. A bunch of engineers, they went to City College, you know, like they're there. So they've done very well if they were able to master that system. The problem with that system is that, and it's the same problem here, by the way. So it's all relative when I say it's better here. The problem with the Haitian educational system is that on the whole, it does not teach people to be responsible for their own environment, for their own well-being. So you go to schools, you get a, you know, a degree, and then you have to go work, you know, for somebody else. It doesn't teach you, you know, and even though we have like a bunch of agronomists who are trained in Haiti, a bunch of engineers, but like one of our elders says, you know, like, you know, when it's time to build a road, why do we have to like, you know, call a foreign company to come do it? It's like, you know, damn, build your road, you know, and if it falls apart, you know, you do it again, you know, like, you know, until you know how to do it yourself.
Perfect it, yeah.
I feel like that there's some similarity with America too, because like some of the courses in school, it doesn't really resonate to real world problems, and I think that one of there is this person, I think Brian Lazensky, he did like a TED talk, and he was talking about there's so many different methods for kids to learn, and you mentioned earlier about self-identity and cultural context, and you know, into the classroom. I think that one of the things that he said was one of the methods that he wanted to push in a lot of schools was basically not learning in a classroom setting. So basically taking them outside and basically using stuff that they see around them to actually create problems and solution and answer certain questions. So hypothetically, if you're learning math, you'll probably go outside and learn about, okay, how to structure a building. You know, you'll use that in everyday issues. I feel like that would be more needed. I don't know how easy that is to create a curriculum when it comes to bringing students outside the classroom, because I know with COVID and all this extra political stuff, it's very touchy. I know in some cases people can be empowered to just teach their own kids and homeschool them. You have had experience with homeschooling at one point, have you?
No, never homeschooling.
What is your take on that in terms of homeschooling your own kids, you know?
Well, I think it's a great thing if you can do it, you know. Why not? But you know, just picking up what you started saying about this gentleman suggesting this particular model of teaching the kids, like openly take them to the field, so to say, and teach them things, not just practical, but make things relevant to their lives. You know, I think that that model actually exists. That's the model I was taught when I was an education person. You're supposed to make things very relevant for the kids, you know, like teaching, you know, you go where they are and you bring them up. As opposed to like, you know, I'm here, well, and just ask them to come up to you. You go where they are and you show them the path so that they can rise up. I think that model is here, and that's how it's supposed to be done. But the reality is different. I guess the better schools, you know, probably do it that way.
That's a fact.
You know, like the good schools will do it that way. They don't just like, you know, cram the stuff into your head so you could just pass, you know, the math score so your school will look good. So, you know what I mean? It's kind of, you know, ridiculous to, you know, to just cram stuff into kids' heads so they can just pass the damn Regents test, and so the school can show that. In other words, when the schools try to improve themselves, they make things worse. Because if a school is failing, and then all the principal wants to do is like, well, listen, we got to get 60% of the kids to pass the test, and we got to get 80% to pass this on English. Then it becomes like you have these kids chasing these abstract
ideas.
The mindset is not right.
These abstract goals that bureaucrats have put together, as opposed to real learning.
And then that affects their way of thinking going forward.
Well, exactly. And so the problem becomes like, you know, well, this kid has to graduate in 4 years, you know, because the state will not pay for 5. Well, if it takes you 5 years to graduate from school, what the hell? You know, like, you know, pay more money for it and do it. So the thing is, like, people don't, they resent the political will, and the people don't want to invest the money into, you know, into actually trying to teach these kids by, you using the correct models
Yeah.
that maybe take a little longer, but you get better results at the end, as opposed to just like learning, just learn the basics of math, learn the basics of science and foreign languages, what have you, and then you're good to go. So everything looks good on paper.
But they're not really actually learning it.
Right.
I know you said something about people not like. Obviously, the education system has been defunded over the past years. And allegedly in the last 2 years, Bill Gates allegedly said that he was going to donate 1.7 million, I believe, or higher, to the education system. But it was specific to this initiative where he felt like a lot of kids were struggling in math, and so instead of saying that we're going to help the kids get the right answer, what they're going to do is foster the experience of, kids may not get the same answer, but, we'll help them build the tools. And I did the same thing. I'm like, that doesn't make no sense. You're teaching kids to be stupid. You're teaching kids to say that there's more than one answer to something that we know the answer is. When it comes to math is universal.
Right.
That I didn't understand. I think that, when there's programs that's made for students, like you said, all these new standardized tests in the regions and so on, it's pretty much doing the opposite. I feel like it's indoctrinating a lot of our students. And in some cases, like, what do we do at that point? I feel like there's a lot of people definitely in our community, people like you, that have gotten their own experience and they know true history. How do we create our own curriculum and create the platforms for the youth that actually need it in a way that's going to actually help develop them? Like, that's the question that everybody's trying to answer.
Listen, let's put it this way. I think I'm gonna this is probably a bit perverse and maybe exaggerated. Every single person on this planet, in a sense, should have like a civilizing mission for the world.
I believe that. Yeah.
Okay, in that sense, So I'll put it this way as well. So that how do we create our own? We need to know. We need to convey to our oppressors and to the dominant world, which is the Western model. Now we have China, of course, on the rise. We have other societies that are rising, so it's not just like just bipolar thing. We need to communicate to the world that somehow we can do things on our own, and that in order for us to write a curriculum that will be appropriate for our kids, we have to believe in ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to, in Vodou, for example, one of the and I'm no expert in the field, but I've learned enough in the past few years about it. One of the things that we know is that we're born all knowing. Okay, that doesn't mean that when we're 6 months old we already have a PhD in science. It doesn't mean that. It simply means we have our minds are structured in such a way that we're ready to develop those various paths.
Intuitively, like intuitively, we're connected.
Intuitively, and also objective in other ways as well. Right? Intuitively. Well, certainly, yes. So I think that this idea of being able to write our own curriculum, and it's happening. I mean, I'd love to see like more black private schools, for example, like
100%.
Little kids, not just like the colleges, I'd like to see more black private schools for like little kids, adolescents, high school kids, that would be a great thing.
I think that's imperative, and that's so true, because I noticed that we have a lot of black schools, black colleges, but I feel like we need to start them young, be able to be in a place where there's people that they can identify with and actually work and create solutions for problems that they both share.
Right, and it's not just a question of having a black school, as a sort of like as a counter to a white school,
right?
But just a counter, like. Because once you're countering, then it becomes like the person you're countering becomes your guiding point, so to say. You know what I mean? So you need to ignore
break.
You need to be aware of
yes.
the opponent, so to say. But you also need to go beyond the opponent.
Right.
It's crazy. We were just talking about last time on our last episode. I mentioned that it's like a lot of times, especially in our community, we focus too much on what the other communities are doing,
right?
To the point that we pick up on their bad traits. And
Right,
that's, the thing is, like you said, we're supposed to be, you're supposed to acknowledge what they're doing because they're successful,
Right,
you know.
right.
But we're also supposed to take the good and create our own new system, our own new modes.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And it's like going back to what you guys say, like how we can create these new spaces, you know, whether it's through, you know, colleges and schools. You know, I think also another thing we have to start acknowledging is like, you know, and not being so fearful of the fact of like certain things like the meta world and
the which world?
The metaverse and all those type of things.
Yeah.
And how can we use these tools to create these type of spaces that we talk about that we need in innovative ways if we're gonna, you know, step into this type of new type of spaces. Yeah.
No, we need to do that. You know, I guess, you know, like, you know, I was talking about the art world before being so open out of, you know, with black artists all over the place, and, you know,
right.
You know, on cover of magazines and Times, they were presenting, United States, the Venice Biennale, and it's like it's incredible.
Right.
But you know, I guess my reservation about that whole like success story, so to say,
right.
It's like when Obama become the president. You know, it's like you they can put you on a platform.
Yeah.
But what's the underlying structure of that platform?
Exactly.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's conceivable to have a completely, you know, black world,
right,
and then rule the world like we were white.
Right.
That, you know what I'm trying to say. So that's the perversion that we need to to avoid, because that would lead us to our doom. Because obviously, the world cannot live. If the rest of the world, you know, were to be like the United States, there'll be there'll be no resources left for humanity.
That's
like people cannot live over the world the way we live here.
Right.
I wanted to ask, I looked at, quite a few works that you have done, and you have a lot of experience and knowledge on, Hispaniola and some of the history, various Caribbean countries. I wanted to know what was your take on black educators, like people that have gotten degrees from these white schools, or just in general the education system that was basically first created by white people. You have these people that get these black degrees, and now they're teaching these black stories to other students. In most cases, well, honestly, I'll speak for myself, in some cases a lot of information is not true. And of course, when it comes to the history of slavery, of course, and when they do tell the truth, some of those stories are true, but I feel like it's definitely mixed up with information that's not necessarily true to what has happened. And that's the only thing I say on the hypocrisy when it comes to black educators. They get these degrees from these white institutions, and then they have the audacity to say, no, this is not what happened. I know my truth. And they're speaking for a bigger group of people. What is your take on that?
If I follow your question, correctly, you're saying black educators, they reproduce the same thing that they were taught, or they're saying something different, and they're getting in trouble?
They're reproducing the same stuff that has been taught to them.
Right.
But a lot of the information that they're learning were made from books, history books that from the past generations, white men has created and has told us that this is our history. So now you have black educators that have gotten these degrees from those institutions and are basically, regurgitating the information to younger people. And then now younger black people are thinking, okay, this is my story.
Yeah.
A lot of times when there's more than one story, you have slavery, you have, people that was indigenous to the land, you have a lot of different stories. And I feel like there's only one told story. And on top of that, I feel like sometimes black educators, can ostracize other people that are speaking from their experience and their history. Right.
We become the new police.
Right. Where do we find balance on basically, people keeping accountable for the truth that needs to be told?
Well, I think the way to go about this, one of the ways to go about it, is to actually, since the world is a flux, right? We exist in this sort of like we're in the middle of the stream, so to say, right? And it's very hard to kind of like, well, let's just stop the stream so we could get this right.
Right.
You're gonna have to do things while we're in the stream, right? So I think that one of the ways to go about doing this, we have to start, if we want change in the world, like the change that we want to see, we have to basically create, the young kid. We have to prepare the young kids to do that. You have to prepare the people you want to change. I when I taught high school, for quite a few years. And usually I would go and, I like modern art, and you're into Matisse and Picasso. I'll do Cubism. I'll do all the major modern art styles with the kids, and it's all good. and then I'll get to June. I'm like, oh shit, man. I didn't do like, anything about Africa. I didn't do. Then I'll kind of like trying to cram in and rush and like, oh, let me do some Haitian art and let me do something, and then and even though I'm there in the school and my classroom is I used to have a flag that's like red, green, and black, but like like David Hammond's flag. So I sort of consider myself I guess progressive, like racially speaking and so forth. But still, I would find myself in that same bind.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I'm not really teaching these kids. Even now, I know very little about African art. I mean, I know I've seen the books and Mask, and you go to the Met, you see things and stuff like that. But that's not really my forte, and I couldn't speak on that with any kind of I guess conviction. But I probably know it in different ways. I know African art too. I guess to Haitian art, to Vodou.
Very hard.
Yeah.
I think even as a parent, I think at one point, in those times where you're kind of stuck, I think most of the information and teaching is going to have to be done at home in the event that you feel like your kid is getting indoctrinated at school.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask your experience, and this is something that I really was fascinated about. You teach.
By the way, can I cut you off for 1 second? Wait just about a month ago. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
About a month ago, there's a report that came out in the Times, talking about the I think the city community in Brooklyn, or there was a report that somehow these sort of like, I guess, privately funded city schools, what have you. I don't know if they get city. I imagine they get city money, and so forth. That like practically all their kids were not learning. They were not up to par as far as the standards go. So that particular segment of the Jewish community, and that by no means all of it, that's just like one, I guess, their city, community, CDM or what have you, they were failing their kids, according to the state. Because these kids, a lot of them cannot read, some of them, dropped out. If they want to go to a college, they find themselves. So this is the state basically, telling this particular community, listen, you guys are not doing this right. And what's the response of that community is like, well, we're doing things our way.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So we do religious studies. We do this. So I'm saying, I'm not saying we should emulate that particular community. All I'm saying is that there's a community here
that's
who's
bold
willing,
enough. Who's bold enough to,
who's willing to say, listen, the hell with your math scores and your region scores and this and that. Like, we're just going to do this our way.
Yeah, we're not following the metrics.
I don't know what their ultimate goals are, what their purposes are. But that just shows you that
they're willing
other
to
things
stand
possible.
their ground. Yeah.
But it's probably much more complicated than I'm the way I'm putting it. But it's just interesting to factor in. It's an
different groups that's
variable.
Actually standing their ground.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, you're fine. I do want to ask you one quick question. One question, basically, what was your experience teaching kids inside prison? I know you had you had experience where you was teaching kids.
Yeah.
How was that? And I just feel like that's so important for people that's inside right now to actually get that development. This way, when they do have the chance to step outside the world, or even just share information while they're being locked up, it's not just a waste of time. They're actually developing themselves. How was that experience for you?
It was great. I started way back. I taught adults first, in the prison at Sing Sing prison, not for maybe a couple of years, 2-3 years, and then Bedford Hills maybe for a couple of years, and then just more recently I taught younger kids from 14 to about, I guess, 21.
Wow.
I was there for about 3 years, 3 different summers.
And how was the students? Were they receptive to what you was showing them?
Oh yeah, I walked in. It's like everyone in front of me was like a kid that I had back in school in Yonkers. I'm like, whoa, I know these guys, and then I could joke with them, and it was all okay. So I had a great time.
It was like a pure craving that they had when you.
Yeah, I love and respect the kids in jail, because I could have been one of them like that. It's like like that. It's not that hard to go to jail.
but based on your experience, it seems very positive. It seems like the students gravitated to you. They wanted to learn. They wanted to develop themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no such thing as kids not wanting to learn, because learning is a basic thing for everybody.
Yeah.
Human beings, what do we do? When we sit around, even when you sit on your stoop, you're just like looking around.
Yeah,
you're basically like learning. I mean, there's there are different degrees of learning. Of course, you could learn something that's more difficult. That's going to make that requires more effort, rather than just sitting there having a smoking a joint and just chilling out, and you're thinking about the universe. They're learning. You need some discipline to do it. It's cumulative. You need to add to it. You You have to push the bound. Just like if you want to be a good runner, you probably have to run a little harder, every week, every month, so you get better and better and better, and not just like you don't just run whichever way you want and
yeah, and then find a way, or like you said, have something that's so rigid and you're not able to navigate.
Right.
I just feel like that's so heavily important to emphasize, because the different stuff that they do inside prison is meant to train the person head. I just feel like you said, certain courses and coursework that you're doing is actually developing, and that's pretty much more programs that we need inside those prisons. People like you that will actually have those opportunities. And I think the program got shut down, due to COVID and other political reasons. And your story has sounded similar to other people that I have known that have had the chance to teach people inside prison. A lot of those programs have gotten shut down, and it's kind of a repeated thing that's going on. And I think we do need to push forward. I'm sorry to rush you, but I do want to ask you, what are some other things that you're working on? Anything that you want to let the public know about you? This way they can do their own follow-up research.
Yeah, actually, I have different things on different burners, but there is a project that's sort of like on the back burner. It's I am working on a project on the Brookwood Kids Institution where I worked at upstate Columbia County. Yeah, I'm working a major project, on the kids. Yeah, so
wow. How can people follow up and then look into that?
Geez, I'm still like in the cave when it comes to the internet, but I guess they can they can contact me. I guess and I guess
and learn more
I
about
guess
it.
I'm on Facebook. They'll reach me, Andre Juste. They'll
Andre, you're also an activist for a lot of situations and issues that's happening in Haiti.
Yes.
Anything that you're working on right now that you want to highlight that people should know about? Definitely if they don't follow up what's going on with Haiti.
Yeah. Well, right now Haiti is in a very difficult situation. It's really in dire straits, and there's the danger of foreign occupation again, whether it's the United Nations or a combination of various South American countries like they had before, and Haitians are fighting tooth and nails against that. They're saying we don't want anybody coming here to tell us what to do. We don't need your. In other words, let's go back. We don't need your models. These have failed us. Okay, let us do our thing. One of the things that we should be aware of is that like just this past Sunday, actually, there's a front cover of the New York Times. A pretty racist newspaper, and I still buy it. I don't know why. I buy it on Sundays and for the art reviews and Fridays and stuff. There's a picture of of a woman and I guess her child. There's cholera over there, and it's like, wow, look at the misery, the gangs and the cholera. But I read this whole article. There isn't a single mention of any political reasons or social political reason why that situation is
happening.
There.
Wow.
Right. So Haiti is the place I think that the West likes to beat up on, principally because I guess maybe there's jealousy there. You might say, well, jealous of what? Jealous of the poverty and the garbage that's there and the chaos. Well, I think they're first of all we beat Napoleon, his army,
right?
Okay, and we created a republic in 1804, not to, and so I think there are reasons for why they like to pick on us so much.
Yeah,
and,
for what we stand for, black people and black culture. It's us being the first to be independent and break that mode. That's not a representation that they want to showcase to the rest of black people.
Exactly. They don't want to show the good things, that you could do things yourself. It's our model. And unfortunately, sometimes our own leaders, like we're talking about, we choose models that are not our own models.
Correct.
And that goes from Marx to to I don't know. Milton Friedman.
Yeah. Well, Andre, Juste, it was such a pleasure having you on a show. As you guys can see, he has a lot to share. He gives his life to a lot of different purpose. And I want you to check him out. If there's any advice that you can give any person that's trying to navigate their purpose and navigate how they would like to share their gifts, what would that be? And you can share it to the camera.
I think I would say, try to balance out yourself. Take it, one step at a time. We're all in this stream that's kind of like moving, and you have to kind of like work with the stream, and it's not enough to just be a rebel, but I think you also need to tie that idea of rebelliousness and revolution with you have to temper that with a sense of history, so that you're not just like out, because I think the West, we that's one of my latest things, that we make it fashionable to rebel and to revolt,
Right.
and that I have a serious question about that.
No, that's a serious question that needs to be had. You
Yeah.
had me thinking about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow. I think you left us on a definitely serious note.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on here. But yeah,
Yes.
guys, anybody else that want to listen and learn more, please tune into TLKinfamous. Please subscribe. We're going to have his Instagram drop down, Andre Juice. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.
Of course. Peace.